Good afternoon, Ed. Thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate you taking a bit of time just to help our members with some of their concerns as employers to do with responding to the pandemic. Could you tell me a little bit more about Employsure, what you do there, and about yourself, your role at the firm?
Hi, Melina. Yeah, sure. I'm the Managing Director of Employsure, which is a company that provides workplace relations advice to predominantly small and medium-sized businesses. So we're helping them with their day-to-day questions that they have around managing their staff. I am a member of BCCM through our mutual, which is called Employsure Mutual, which is a member-owned mutual, through which we provide protection against claims that they may face from their staff, like unfair dismissal, discrimination claims, and so forth. So, but as you say, we've been particularly busy at the moment with issues related to COVID-19 and managing our staff through that crisis.
And thank you for the resources that you've been sharing with us, and we've shared those with our members through our BCCM website, as well as an article that you've written for us. I'm sure there's a huge number of issues and challenges that are coming up for employers of different sizes, particularly SME businesses. What are some of the top issues that are coming up for the employers that are ringing you, Ed? You know, what's on the top ask list?
So you're right in that there are a huge volume of issues. To give you a sense of it, so we normally on any given day would get about 1,000 phone calls from our client members calling us up, asking about day-to-day issues with their employees. At the moment, we're getting about 4,000 phone calls a day. So to put a number on it, it's people are having about 4 times as many issues as they would normally. And those issues, they're quite wide-ranging, even in the context of COVID-19. They start really with the sort of chaos and crisis management that goes with day-to-day announcements from the government about things like shutdowns and what that means for their staff. Right through to people understandably losing a lot of business at the moment and wanting to know whether they should be proceeding with redundancies or whether there are other options that they could be dealing with their staff through to try and minimise the risk to their business and to try and maximise the way they look after their staff. And then, of course, as you mentioned earlier, JobKeeper is a very big issue right now, having just been brought into legislation.
So many of us haven't had a chance to get across JobKeeper, and the eligibility still seems unclear. Have you already received some questions or queries in relation to it, Ed?
Absolutely, a huge volume. So it got announced about 10 days ago now. The thing that was curious about the announcement for your general business owner or manager was that there wasn't a lot of clarity either about the rules, but also about the fact that it wasn't legislation at that time. And as the last 10 days have gone on, it's become clearer and clearer that there were some points of debate around it. And then on Wednesday of this week, that debate occurred in Parliament. And fortunately, by that stage, most of the big issues seem to have been ironed out. And it was passed through the Senate late on Wednesday night. And it should imminently get assent and become law, and we should get some clarity for business owners. Really important clarity, I think, that certainly I can see businesses, small and large, are craving some understanding and some assistance with the costs that they're facing throughout the business, one of the biggest ones of which is their staff. And obviously their staff are very concerned about jobs and their job security and wage security. So
what are some of the ways that you can help employers negotiate these different stimulus packages? How do you approach a response if someone calls you and is completely unaware that there are these support packages available?
Yeah, so people tend to have a sense of them, but are really unsure about most facets of it, from whether they will be entitled to it. So for most of our clients, businesses with less than $1 billion of turnover, they need to be able to show that they've had a 30% downturn in business compared to the same period last year. Now, the kind of issues that are coming out of that, to give a small example, are clients in places like Townsville who are saying, look, last March we weren't operating because of floods. So it actually looks like we're doing better this year, but what does that mean for my access to JobKeeper? So those kind of examples, there's no such thing really, and this is always the unfortunate thing about rushed legislation like this. They've put a sort of cookie cutter rule in place as to who gets to access it, but in our experience, businesses aren't cookie cutter shaped. So they've got 101 questions about whether they get to access it. And then second to that, there are some quite curious aspects to it that, for example, if you have employees who are true casuals, who work for you for less than a year, they don't have access to it. Then second to that, migrant workers, except for those from New Zealand, don't have access to it. So that's creating a lot of issues for businesses that have both casual employees and also migrant workers. And then part-time workers are another curious one. You could have an employee that might be earning, say, $100 a week from you. Under the JobKeeper legislation, you've actually got to pay them $1,500 a fortnight. So you're ending up, oddly enough, in this circumstance, fishing deeper into your own pocket in order to pay that employee to subsequently get it back from the government. And that's probably the final point I'd make on a general sense, is that there is an issue here that whilst overall people are welcoming the support, and if they're eligible, they will get funding from the government to carry on employing their staff. There's also a cash flow gap in that essentially what employers are being asked to do is to pay their employees today and recover it later from the government, which for a lot of small and medium-sized businesses who are already under significant pressure, that's going to be a problem. So that's the sort of myriad of issues that are coming out of this. And those are the things that we're helping our clients with day to day and trying to help them steer through it so they know not only whether they can get the support, but how it applies and how they need to treat their employees as a consequence.
So some of this information you might try to negotiate through or work your way through in terms of the government advice that's online, but it's really hard to get the nuances out of things, and that's what I'm gathering from just your reflections on JobKeeper. What about occupational health and safety? I mean, employers want to do the right thing. What are some of the options for absences? I mean, in the terrible circumstance, you've got staff that have contracted coronavirus or they're refusing to attend work. What are your top tips around occupational health and safety?
So top tips on health and safety, probably the one that stands out, and noticing, Lena, that you're working from a home at the moment there, is the risk of people working at home and understanding the health and safety obligations that essentially overnight, hundreds of thousands of people have suddenly made their home their workplace. That doesn't change the employer's obligation to provide a safe workplace. So we're recommending that businesses large and small at least get some messaging out to their employees about things like trips and falls in the workplace and also ergonomic setup. What you don't want at the end of all of this is a raft of claims or work cover claims flowing from people having problems because they're not properly set up to work from home. So that's one top tip. Aside from that, what we're increasingly seeing is this sort of it's less people actually with COVID-19, but more of an issue where people are saying, for reasons like they live with an elderly relative and they therefore don't want to turn up to work even though their workplace is still operating. What are the obligations on the employer in that circumstance? And typically the obligation there would be to request that they come into work. If they're refusing to come into work, most employers are of the sentiment that they would be looking to essentially put them on some agreed unpaid leave. Some of the more generous employers might even allow them to take or get access to entitlements like annual leave. Some of the sterner employers are raising that as a disciplinary concern if someone's abjectly refusing to turn up to work. And actually, it's related to that this thing called pandemic leave also got passed into law this week, which seeks to protect employees from getting fired in the event that they don't turn up to work because they're required to self-isolate by the government, but they're otherwise fit for work. So there's just another tricky banana skin thrown in for employers to slip on at the end of this week as well.
So you've put some of these resources and tips up on your website that are freely available. How else can people get in touch with you if they want to dig a bit deeper, make sure that they're doing the right thing?
So very welcome to go onto our website. We've opened up access to all sorts of resources on there on employsure.com.au/coronavirus. Also /JobKeeper. There's a specific set of detailed FAQs on there. The other thing we're doing, which has been very popular at the moment, is at midday each day, we are hosting a live stream on Employsure's Facebook page. And I think probably the attendance on that sums up how confused people are. And we're seeing about 15,000 businesses join that each day. And we do a short introduction as to what's happened overnight in workplace news as such. And then we spend a lot of the time doing a live Q&A, going through questions there and hopefully giving people a commercial steer. Because I think that regardless of whether the government websites have been updated or not, and we're finding they're quite slow to update, to be honest. So 24 hours after JobKeeper was made legislation, there's no news of it on any of the relevant websites. But what people are looking for is commercial steer on those grey questions. As I say, there's not really a business that's truly cookie cutter shaped, so it's quite hard for them to get a really good understanding. Let's not forget as well that as business managers and owners, we're all prone to, even at our best, slipping into a bit of panic and concern, which clouds our thinking. And I think people are needing some support and help to get through that. And I know that BCCM's been providing a great resource in the mornings as well that really sort of cuts through the noise. And that live stream we're doing at midday is our version of that, I suppose.
Great, thanks Ed. And so that live stream, they can find the link to the Facebook page through your website?
Exactly, yes. And just by searching on Facebook, they'll find us on there, and at midday each day, we're live.
That's a very mutual response. So thank you on behalf of the council.
I'd only add to that as well. I think one of the things I'm seeing from a lot of businesses is that people are getting stuck in the weeds and being very reactive. And I think we all, as leaders during this time, owe it to our organisations, also our staff, to stop and pause and think. And during this weekend, that might be quite a good chance to do that. The last thing you want to be doing is running around cutting costs at this stage with a sort of slashing machine. You need to be doing it much more with a surgeon's scalpel to be quite precise in your next steps. And there are livelihoods at stake here, and we'd urge people to look very carefully and critically at how they manage costs through this time. In order that we all come out of the other side of this, and we will come out the other side of it, stronger organisationally, not depleted.
We want to rebound and rebuild, and particularly in our sector. So thank you again, Ed. We might come back from time to time and just get some updates from you. It's been really, really enlightening and informative for me, and I'm sure for our members.